Yeah, but you know how that goes.
Yep. Oh, we're live.
Oh, okay. Well, thank you. Thanks for the warning.
I like to get you off of your balance there and just
Mhm.
so we're back. It's live and it's the Trampled Underfoot podcast show. And boy, do we have a show prepared for you. I'm not lying to my through my teeth, but take it away, Mark.
It's a new week. It's another Tuesday. Welcome to today. Now, hola, muchacho. Um, this one is kind of weird. I have talked to you about this guy named Nick, the fat electrician, a couple of times, and he has two channels. One of them he calls the Fat Files, and he likes to just go off on rants about various things. Um, and he brought up something in his one of his later videos here, most recent videos, something that I had never even considered. And part of me is pissed off about it, part of me is jealous over it, and part of me thinks it's absolute genius.
Okay.
And we're talking about he was talking about Starbucks,
The coffee company.
the coffee company, yes. And he went through in this video, he went through the history, and all he wanted to research was how does Starbucks make so much money? And it all came down to this one particular CEO who just basically said, we got to build as many of these things as we can. And that's what he did. He says, one line he says in this video, uh, Starbucks is one of the few places I can actually walk into a Starbucks, look out the window, and see another Starbucks, you know,
Yeah,
because they're just everywhere.
they are. It's it's one of the big chains that we that's one of the big chains.
Mm-hmm.
In Miami, we have a bunch of Starbucks, but not a bunch, but we have a bunch. Um, Maybe not as much as other places because we have the alternatives of the, let's call it the Latin experience of walk up windows.
Mm-hmm.
So, and they do the same, roughly the same thing. So a Starbucks and a Cafe Cubano is kind of like a, what is it, a latte? It's the same as a
It's an
latte.
espresso, yeah.
It's an espresso with milk.
Mm-hmm.
There is a difference in the preparation of the espresso, but broadly, and you can tell the difference when you taste it, like, but it's within the range. So I
Mm-hmm.
think that it but tourists, when they see a Starbucks, they're like, oh, and it's familiar, and they go there. It's like,
Mm-hmm.
when you go
Yeah.
on vacation, you're gonna go to the, I mean, you wouldn't if you thought of being a creative, like, let's enjoy the
Yeah.
area. But a lot of Americans tend to. I know that I do it. If I go, or
Yep.
whenever I've been, I see something familiar and I go right there.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And that's why. Is because it is familiar. You can walk into a McDonald's anywhere and you know what to expect. There's no exploration. There's
Cold
no
fries.
looking at the menu going, what's this? What is this? What does that come with? You know what you're going to get. I mean, we ate the Burger King in Paris, but, you know, but the thing about Starbucks that he found so fascinating, and I looked into it a little bit on my own, was not so much the store, but their app on the smartphone. And the way the app works is you get it on your phone and you charge it up. It's kind of like a gift card. You put, say, 50 bucks on your Starbucks app on your phone. And you can walk into any Starbucks, order what you want, and then hold up your phone. They scan the little code and it's deducted from your balance. And but you pay no cash for the coffee. You walk out. And it's kind of one of those revolving type of a things. It's like a gift card. But as he started digging into this, he found that this was they're basically operating like a bank with one exception. Once you put that $50 on in the app, you can't get it back. You cannot cash it out. The only way you can get that is in coffee or whatever, you know.
That's an app I wouldn't be using.
So it's kind of a victimless crime, but it's not a crime because it's 100% legal.
Yeah.
Nobody's mad about it because, if you're the kind of person who's going to drink $50 a month worth of Starbucks coffee, you don't care. You've got $50 worth of stuff coming to you, and you're probably going to charge it up again next month. Put another 50, 60, $70 on it. No big deal. Here's the thing, though. As of January of 2024, they have $1.7 billion that hasn't been redeemed yet. That's not to say that it won't be, it just hasn't been redeemed. People have paid, they've got $1.7 billion sitting there, and folks are, getting their coffee and charging up more, putting or loading up more on their cards and doing this, that, and the other thing. But they're basically acting like an unregulated bank. They're not FDIC insured. They're not subject to banking demands or regulations. But people have basically given them $1.7 billion in return for coffee whenever they walk into a store. Now, part of me is pissed off about the fact that they're not regulated. You can't get your money back. But part of me thinks that that's absolutely genius.
It's way better than um now I wouldn't participate, but it's way better than by a long shot.
Mm-hmm.
But it's way better than, and it's similar to what the government does in that they collect taxes, and we expect future returns in the exchange, in the providing of services and such and this and that.
Mm-hmm.
Or you could say from your pulling from your check that you see it at a later
Mm-hmm.
date as it. So it's similar in that way, except that in this situation, you're not forced to do to
No,
do it.
you're not. But it's that's why I say it's kind of like an unregulated bank because it's very similar to a bank in that you give a bank, you go into a bank, you cash a check, you deposit $100, and they can do whatever they want with that $100.
Yeah, it's a service they're
But
providing.
you know that you can walk in and you can say, I want to get $100 out of my account, and they'll give you $100.
Mhm.
They'll adjust your balance and everything, but it's not going to be that same $100 bill you handed them. So they can go and invest it and do whatever. Starbucks can do the same thing because that $1.7 billion exists only on paper.
Hold on, my dog's
Uh-oh.
got something in his nose. You know when the
When
nose
they
thing.
do thing, yeah. Wow. Let's see here. Jim Dockrell says, I've been to a Starbucks exactly twice. They look at you funny when you just order a coffee. I don't think they understand one syllable orders. Yeah, they do, but see, you're not participating in the Starbucks experience. And that was one of the things he talked about in this video was how it came about in that he was on a vacation in Italy, the CEO of Starbucks, and they have a coffee and coffee shop culture over there that we didn't have here. And it operates more or less like a bar. And the difference being no alcohol, it's all caffeine. So in Italy, a coffee shop is a place where you can go hang out before work, whereas a bar in the US is a place you go hang out after work. And we didn't have that kind of a culture here. So he was trying to bring that culture here. And whether he succeeded or failed is open to debate. But it was a culture that didn't exist here until he tried to bring it here. And, you know, love it or hate it, you got to admit they're successful at it. So, yeah, I'm with you. People ordering $7 coffees and then complain about the price of gas. Well, again, it's that atmosphere, it's that whole thing. People go to a bar and pay triple the price for a beer rather than get a six pack and take it home. People pay for two things: they pay for products and they pay for experiences. And when you go to a bar and BS with your buddies, you're not there because the prices are cheap. You're there because of the atmosphere, the place, and the camaraderie and all that other good stuff. He was trying to bring that in the coffee shop realm. But yeah, your point is well taken. I'm not a regular visitor either. I haven't been in a Starbucks in probably 12, 13 years now. So,
That was a good way to fill in.
well, I do what I can. But the thing about this whole Starbucks thing with this money, and I'm going to fixate on that $1.7 billion because, dude, 1.7 billion with a B. They're paying no interest. They don't have to give the money back. It's a redeemable thing. You can go get, coffee or coffee products or supplies or the desserts that they have there. You can go get any of that on this app.
Yeah, but you're working with the end
Mhm.
user benefits.
Mhm.
Um, I'm thinking in terms of what a great strategy because you're collecting all that money. People
Uh-huh.
forget that they even have the app, or they're not they don't bother with it. But you're
Uh-huh.
collecting it up front. It's the perfect idea, and I'm saying that when you compare it with like what governments do and its requirements, it's similar except for you get to choose whether to participate in Starbucks little thing.
And
But I
it's
think it's
100% voluntary, yeah.
yeah, I think it's perfectly all right. It's up to people to have the
Mhm.
wherewithal, you
And
know.
here's the crazy part. Starbucks can do whatever they want with that money. They can invest it, they can build more stores, they can do whatever they want with that money. If they were to do something silly like invested in treasury bills with the US government, which pays like 5%, they would still make $85 million a year just in interest off of that 1.7 billion if they were dumb enough to invest it that small. You know, that's it. And here's the kicker about it: it's not income, it's not taxable. It's people have paid money to redeem, so it sits in limbo, so
Mhm.
they pay no taxes on it. It's actually a liability because they have to provide $1.7 billion worth of product.
And what you just said there, that little setup, is likely the same setup that occurs in certain businesses in many
Hmm.
instances across the country in order to escape a bunch of things. And I could foresee people in common doing said things so that you take a loss at your end as a user of the product or service, and at the other end they don't have anything weighing them down in terms of what they have.
Right.
So what I'm saying is that I can see this that you just said being used by
Hmm.
people on both ends that have pre-assessed how to get away from dealing with government, uh, you know, collecting, let's say, um, in different. I'm just saying it broadly, but I
Hmm.
can see in that little mathematical, in that little gig, I could
Uh-huh.
see a way of getting around it. So, there's nothing stopping people to grouping together in order to avoid
Yeah.
um, the punishment of the government, and they could just say, okay, we're going to form a group here, and we are all going to invest in a service, but the service will not be realized until what, until it's realized. And then on the service end, they happen to be the same people, or in conjunction with the same people that are purchasing the service. The money isn't, and they all come to an agreement, and the money isn't being, like, so everybody profits, let's say.
Yeah.
Something, I can see something in there. I haven't thought it through, but just by what you said there, as a
Mhm.
big, and I could see that as possibly occurring in other, um, uh, sections of
Right.
business and whatnot.
Right.
Maybe
Right.
I'm saying foolishness, but there's something there.
No, no, you're absolutely right. Now, Jim, I gotta address something here. Jim says Canada has a law that states gift cards can no longer have an expiration date. That's a good law. I may be wrong, but I believe we have the same law. I believe we have the same or a similar law. But what you've got is, for instance, if you had a gift card and you go to whatever store that gift card's for, and you've got $10 on the gift card and you buy something for $9.65. Well, you got 35 cents left on that gift card. Do you care about that 35 cents?
Yeah.
Now multiply that by a million people that don't care about that 35 cents. That's a butt ton of money out there that's going unclaimed.
Yeah, that's why local governments and regional governments and
Mhm.
whatever state and whatnot will say we're just raising a penny on this service here, and to the end user, or to
Yeah,
average citizen, it's just a penny, and then but in the aggregate, it becomes a huge chunk of
it's
money.
huge.
But
Mhm.
if you multiply, oh, it's just this much. It's just as a whole.
Yeah,
That's where it comes back to by the. So everything is dependent
yeah,
on a degree.
exactly. But see, that's where the gift card thing benefits the people issuing the gift card. Because let's take the Starbucks app, for example. If you drop your phone and break it, you better hope they can get that SIM card, or you can remember your login details for that app. Because if you can't remember, it's just gone. It's just gone. You know, they may or may not keep a record of it that you can get through tech support or something like that. I don't know the ins and outs of that. But if you've got, $4.65 left on it, it's too much hassle. I'm not going to worry about it. And that's four
What if you
bucks I don't
had
have to worry
what if
about.
you had two groups of people?
Mhm.
We can narrow it to just two individuals, but let's use
Okay.
group because it takes out a little bit of the dirtying the waters of it. And I'm not thinking this through all the way. I'm just throwing
Yeah.
something out. But what if you have one group of people that provide a service that
Mhm.
is that people can purchase into,
Mhm.
and they collect funds, but
Mhm.
they don't become realized until the service is applied. Just like Starbucks, everything that you just said. But then the people, so you have two groups. You have that group that's providing the service, but
Mhm.
then this group here that's buying that service also has a service. They're buying this service, but then this group that is providing the first service and this group that's providing the second service
Mhm.
purchase each other's services that are never realized, or realized in some degree at some point. So you've effectively, and again, I'm not thinking this all the way through, but I'm saying that here you have something that we could potentially, there's something there. I'd have to actually sit through it, but now there's this cyclical thing where they no one's being touched by the stuff that they have, but they're in
I
agreement with
get
each
what you're saying, and there are. I get what you're saying. I don't know how that would work.
other. No, I
I
don't
see
either.
what you're. I see what you're saying. Let's say you have a taxi company, and I have a limousine service, and you buy 100 hours of limousine service, and I buy 100 hours of, or 100 miles of taxi service,
Mhm.
but I never use them. But we both keep buying from each other.
I can use your service that I just bought as a
Mm-hmm.
liability in my tax thing as a write off, and you
Yeah,
could do the same for yours, and we're helping each other out to create a safe
right,
haven for our money
right.
until we
But
pull it. But when we pull it, we pay that we pay that amount liability, or we pay that amount that we would owe, but in the meantime that company can use it to create more funds, and we can get, and so there's something there, but whatever.
Well, yeah, but then again, you're making a provision that we can pull the money back out. Starbucks don't let you do that. You can't
No, I'm
redeem
not
it
talking
for
about
cash.
Starbucks. I'm saying using
Okay.
the principles that
Yeah.
you're saying about Starbucks.
Mhm.
What I can see. So we all know that there's people that do little safe havens. And by the way, stocks themselves. There's this whole thing where you invest, and let's say you make $100 million,
Mhm.
but you're not pulling it. You keep it in the stock market. There's nothing happening
Right.
that you're liable.
Right.
Only the danger of it.
Right.
Of losing it, but
Right.
it's not
Because
until
you haven't gained until you pull that money out or you cash in. Right.
right. So now in this scenario, without going into that stock situation, you
Hmm.
have two people that provide services,
Hmm.
and they do this exchange where the
Hmm.
money that you give the company for future services,
Hmm.
that you give the money, it's no longer in your hands. It's in those. It's in that company, but that
Right.
company is in league with you, and
Hmm.
they're also buying from your company. And so what happens is, both are future realizations that have not been realized
Right.
as of now. So they're stuck in that limbo that you were saying. But at
Right.
the same time, you can write off that purchase, both
That's a
as a write off.
liability. It's a liability for you. Yes.
And the moment that you pull it,
Hmm.
then you'll have to pay that. But
Right.
in the meantime, the company you gave the money to can take that money and
And
do
do what they
investments
want.
that you pre-approved, both of you, behind the scenes, or
Hmm.
whatever. Nobody knows really, because nobody knows. They could, but
Sure.
and then that money appreciates. They buy more of your stuff, you buy more, and then the circle keeps going. There is something right there.
Yep. Now, Steve says you have built the barter system, but the IRS has figured out how to tax it only if you pull your money out or you realize a profit
But
from
that's
it.
what I'm saying. In order to avoid an immediate
Right.
having to pay, you can delay it until you need it. But in the meantime, the money that you gave to that other company that is in league with you, they're freezing that money. It's no longer in your hands. But what they do is they go make money with that money, and then they, to pay you off for your thing, they go and buy more of your service, and then vice versa. So all, yes, you end up paying, but well, maybe I'm not thinking this the whole way through, because at the end of the day, you could just do the same thing with your proper money and not even do that. I'd have to think through the whole thing.
Well, but see, no, because that 100 hours, that 100 miles of taxi service I bought from you,
Yeah,
that's a liability to you. You
right.
owe me 100 miles of taxi service.
That's right.
So that money that you got there is not income because until I take you up on that 100 miles. So it's sitting there in limbo.
In limbo. And then but what if I take that money and invest it?
Then yeah, that's fine.
But
The
it,
only thing you owe me is that 100 miles of taxi rides.
no, but okay, I get that. But if we're in league,
Hmm.
and so I say, yeah, this is where I'm sort of getting, I think we're in the same spot. Obviously, we haven't sat before we're talking it.
Hmm.
So, but like, we're in league already. So you're going to give me money. But
Hmm.
we're already, I agree with you in this scenario,
Hmm.
of you giving me money, that money, I'm going to use it so that we both
Yeah.
make money. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to put it in that limbo, but it's going to be in that limbo, but you're going to write it off as a liability. And
Hmm.
then to protect other assets of your, wait, let me say, and then I'm going to take that money, invest it to make more money for you and me. And then when I get the money, and I
Hmm.
send it to you, I'm sending it to you by buying more of your services that are never realized for me, and then you go do the
Right.
same thing, and we keep
Well,
back
not
and forth.
only is it a liability for me because I paid you for that service, it's a liability for you because you owe me that service. So
Right.
you're not taxed on that money there.
Well, so then, you know, what's to stop? Nothing. I guess apparently, according to as you've explained, as you've explained, Starbucks, regular people can do that amongst themselves and create. The problem is when somebody breaks the cycle
Hmm.
and goes off on their own to collect all the goodies, and then they
Hmm.
screw everything up. So that's where contracts could probably come in for some reason or another. But I see that as a nice way of defending against all the bull crap and this and that. I haven't thought it the whole way through.
Right.
It may be total bunk, but whatever. It's just an exercise without further
Hmm.
pre-thinking of it at the moment. But there's something there. There's something there.
Now, Steve says also you can't claim it as a liability unless you also show it as a profit. Yes, you can, Steve. It's a debt. It's a debt. You owe something. It's a debt, so it is a liability. So, I mean, look, he and I are just throwing this out here.
Yeah,
I'm not a
without
lawyer. I'm not a tax professional. I don't, I'm certainly not a tax lawyer. But if Starbucks can do it with $1.7 billion, not be taxed on it, not be regulated, and claim it as a liability.
what did he say next?
But the profit paid in to gain that debt is a profit to the company. Not, no, it's not.
Not if the services
They're
are not
paying for
performed.
services that have not yet been performed.
Wait, but wait a second. Steve
When
might have
that
a
service is performed, then it could be considered property.
wait, but wait. There might be something with what Steve is saying because um so I don't know, but I'm just gonna say with what he's arguing, or at least what I think is what he's arguing,
Hmm.
that if I go to you and you're a construction guy that
Hmm.
builds shutters or whatever,
Hmm.
and I pay you for it, but for a future event when I need it, or just the same similar thing,
Hmm.
whatever. The um once I've transferred money to you, you've received this money. However, the transaction is not fully
It's not
um,
complete.
complete. Although you have the money side of it,
Hmm.
we don't know if there's some sort of legal out where it falls into that. You're saying it does.
Yes. If I, for instance, if I take the money to make windows for you and that check gets deposited in the bank, then I go in and I cut two fingers off with the table saw, which I try not to do. I now can't fulfill that order. I give you your money back. It's not taxable income until I performed the service. Once I have given you those windows and the transaction is finalized, now it's taxable.
So wait a second. If in 1 year
Mm-hmm.
you receive for your brand of coffee, Lindsay Coffee,
Mm-hmm.
$1 million that has not been realized, but it came into your coffers,
Mm-hmm.
you could offset that that expense or that taxation. In
Okay,
other words,
run that past me again.
you're Lindsay Coffee,
Mm-hmm.
and you've collected from your smaller operation than Starbucks, same difference,
Mm-hmm.
and you receive $1 million of those apps, your specific app,
Mm-hmm.
not realized.
Right.
They're just sitting there. They haven't come around to get the
Right.
coffee. The year went by. You still have the $1 million
Mm-hmm.
for a service that you haven't
Right.
concluded.
Mm-hmm.
You're saying that you can write that off and say,
I
or
can't write it off, but it's not a profit yet.
even if you use it, like let's say you received it, the transaction is
Okay.
not completed because it's still sitting in that limbo. You're saying,
Right. Exactly.
can you then take that money and use it all throughout the year?
Yeah. If you make any profit off of it, that's taxable.
No,
That's
I no
taxable.
no no.
But
I'm just
but
talking.
no, that $1 million a year, that's just sitting in limbo. That's waiting for the transaction. Now, Lindsay Coffee Company, somebody comes in and they get a latte and it's $12 because they have redeemed The income, that $12 is taxable.
No, dude, I know what I'm getting at because I want to hone in on this part. You may not have the answer because it's not like
Mm-hmm.
we're just nobody buys, nobody redeems nothing or
Okay.
anything. You've got $1 million.
Uh-huh.
There's no other way. You have in your hands $1 million from X
Right.
amount of people that have never redeemed it.
Right.
The year goes by, and within that year, you have this million that you've used for other things. It's
Mm-hmm.
gone into your bank. You've been paying. You've been poof, poof, bam,
Yep.
boom, bam, bam. And when it comes time to set your record straight, you haven't performed or fulfilled the service, but you use that money on all sorts of places.
Mm-hmm.
Let's say just to spend it, let's say, or invest it or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
You haven't claimed any money apart from the fact that you have services pending that have not been fulfilled, but the
Right.
money did go to your. Is that a gain?
No, because the money is still there. It's all on paper. The money is still there. I have to have, that's where bookkeeping gets into it, because let's say it's $1 million. My company better have $1 million that worth of product that it can provide that service. I better be able to provide that service.
I get that. I'm just talking about now.
But
You
yes,
got
the $1 million is still there.
and you can use it, buy it, spend it. You can waste
Sure.
it on 5 trips to Cancun, and this and
Sure.
that, and it doesn't look like, and it's not officially gains.
No, because it's still there. You physically have taken $100 out of there and spent it, but you've got money coming in other places. The money is still there.
What do you mean money in other places?
Well, you've still got income coming in. It's all on paper. Remember, this is all on the books. We have $1 million for this, for my gift card thingy.
Right.
All right. That's over there, set in stone. But the money that came in went in to basically the actual general fund, just like when you put money into the bank. You go in with five $100 bills, you put those $500 bills, they put it in your bank account. That's on paper. Those five $100 bills just went to the lighting guy to come in and change all the fixtures from fluorescent to LED. But your $500 is still there. Yes, exactly. It's basically an interest free and payment free loan. Starbucks got $1.7 billion that they can do whatever they want with. It's a loan. They're paying no interest and they're getting no interest. But they can use that money however they want. All they have to do is provide that much money worth of coffee upon demand, which they do.
It's a win-win for them.
It's a win-win for everybody. That's why I'm saying part of me is pissed off about it. Part of me thinks it's absolutely genius. And yes, where did he put it? Steve said the Starbucks part that bothers me most is they estimate almost 30% will be lost. Yeah, a lot of it will be lost. When you think about gift cards as a whole, and I never really understood them, but I kind of understand them. When you look at gift cards as a whole, all these people that have a gift card with 18 cents on it, or $1.13 on it, are you going to use that? Probably not. You probably forgot you had it and threw it in a drawer somewhere and using it as a glue spreader or something like that, you know so
It doesn't bother me at all that they do it, and the only reason why I could really care less whether or not. So here's the thing: the main principle for me here, at least as far as I can see it right now, is that they're not forcing people to acquire
nope.
the service. It's on them to
Hmm.
realize whether or not it's a stupid thing to do or not.
Well,
It's on them.
and that's what I mean. Nobody is mad about it. Nobody is mad about it. They're like, okay, yeah, I can go in with my phone and I can get my latte. There you go. In fact, give me two of them. And bing, bing. I didn't know. I took no cash out of my pocket. I didn't swipe a card or nothing like that. Just I show them that they scan the code and I get my drink and I'm gone. You know, it's actually a pretty cool system.
I think it's called
Mhm.
untethered, or I'm paraphrasing, but it's free exchange according to individuals deciding
Yeah,
what and what not to do
absolutely.
without the use of some third party to
Absolutely.
administer this or that.
And nobody's pissed off about it at all. And that's the good part, is nobody's complaining except me right now, but I'm not really complaining. The only thing I'm complaining about is, why the hell didn't I think of this? You know? Then again,
Yeah.
I'm not in a position to do anything like this.
Well, this is not the same thing, but just kind of with creative ways of this and that.
Hmm.
Um, and I know that you're going to be able to. Well, I don't know that, but you might be able to associate some examples in whatever.
Okay.
Back in the 2000s, like beginning in 2000, as computers started to become more everywhere, um, they started to release programs that emulated um, musical instruments that you can play through hardware through your computer, and it would emulate a Fender amp from
Hmm.
1964,
Yeah.
or a Hammond organ or whatever.
Yeah.
And these programs served the function of exactly that. And then there were programs to operate those programs, and it was a whole industry. But here's the thing: as an enthusiast and a musician, a recording guy or whatever at home, like many other people, um, I bought those things. But when I bought those things, even the digital things, when you bought it, it was yours.
Hmm.
Um, and they would give you free updates for X amount of time and this and that, and
Uh-huh.
all fine. So you would buy what you need. Well, at some point, they decided to change up the model of how that occurred, and instead, kind of like what Avid does, or Adobe with their Photoshops and their this and that.
Yeah.
And what they decided on was that it's more beneficial for them as far as profit, apparently, where they rent out or lease out
It,
the software,
a subscription model. Yeah.
subscription model, as opposed to buying it, and then now you have it and you're
Yep.
done. And so um once they changed over to that, that was the beginning of me not changing with the times, as I always do, in many cases. And I just kept using the older software, without worry of the newer software,
Hmm.
whatever. Because here's two things about that. I'll try to wrap it up with this. I can basically, so let me try to, in the music world, obviously, forever and a day they used to go into a studio
Yeah.
where they had all the compressors and reverbs and such,
Yeah.
so you utilize what was in there. In the digital world, they reproduced that in digital format,
Hmm.
so you
You can
can
do
plug
that
them,
in your living room.
and you could do that in your living room. Well, okay, but here's the thing: extra updates
Hmm.
or more brand new versions of the old stuff, they're providing brand new stuff roughly, but it's the same stuff basically. So what I'm getting at is this: that even though I'm using 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 year old software and products,
Hmm.
it's distortion is still distortion is still
Right.
distortion. So you may beautify the external, like the graphics and
Yeah.
and the more buttons that you have, but the basic fundamentals is that you're working with distortion. So, and yes, there's some stuff that's really cool that some companies provide, like a
Hmm.
nice guitar tone that has a certain, but basically the stuff that came out in 2000
Uh-huh.
is the same stuff that's happening
Pretty
now,
much the same stuff. Yeah.
as far as the basic things. So, just in conclusion, the only problem with all that is that when all softwares and hardwares and um, Windows updates
Hmm.
require updating, you better hope that you keep your old system and all its peripherals and such and this and that functional, because if not, your ability to transfer over new stuff is going to be virtually either difficult
Gone.
or gone.
Yeah. Yeah. Because some software, well, we face that in the CNC world, where for years. And it's probably the program, I won't say most responsible, but it was a big boost um, for the home CNC hobby. And it was a program called Mach 3. And what it did was it actually controls the movements of the machine. You draw your design, you do your manufacturing toolpaths and everything, then you save a code. Mach 3 actually runs that code and moves the machine around. It was cheap. It had a ton of options. It was really a killer program back in the day. It was Windows based. Windows went through a bunch of changes and equipment changed, and they went from using the big parallel ports to USB ports. And then more and more updates came along to the Windows operating system, and pretty soon Mach 3 wouldn't work on Windows anymore because the operating system moved ahead of that program. So they had to develop a whole new program to work with the new operating system. But they couldn't give that away for free. So now people who spent $175 10 years ago find themselves having to spend $250 for this new version of the program just to get it to work. Now, all that being said, on my old machine that I had, it was pretty bare bones and basic. The computer I ran it off of ran Windows XP, and I used that up to 2 years ago. 2 years ago, I got the new machine and I had to get the new software. But I was using antiquated equipment, and I can reach out right here, right now, and I can touch 4 computers that have Windows XP on them because I knew one of these days that computer I was running it on was going to die. So I had backups. And it's easy to find old computers. People will give them to you to get them out of their closets, you know?
Let me ask you this question. You
So,
might not have an answer. Well, go ahead. Go ahead.
but I'm with you on that because a lot of companies have gone to this monthly subscription model, and then they'll give you a cheaper price if you pay for an annual subscription.
Mhm.
But you're still paying to use the software once
Yeah.
a month or once a year.
Yeah. I don't like that model. I like to
I
own
don't
it.
either.
I like to purchase and leave me alone.
Well, let's make a point clear. If you look at your user agreements and everything, you're not buying the software. You're
You're renting it?
buying a license to use the software.
Right.
So,
Well, so yeah. I get that. You don't own the software, so now you
Mhm.
can,
Right.
reinvent the. I get it.
And that license is still good. For instance, if you bought, I don't know, you used what, Pro Tools is what you used?
Yeah.
If you bought a license to use Pro Tools, you're still licensed to use that version of Pro Tools.
Well, a side note of that,
Mhm.
because I wanted to go somewhere else, but I pulled my laptop out, and it's a laptop from like the early 2000s
Mhm.
that I bought at Best Buy back in the day, and I installed Pro Tools from back then into it with all the doohickeys and whatnot, but not all of them, just enough so that I could take my laptop to my different musician friends' house, set it up, and we can record.
Mhm.
So I hadn't touched that in over 20 years, let's say roughly,
Mhm.
or about 10 to 12 years. Which, and then recently I turned it on, but I found myself having, for some reason, having to reinitiate a lot of the stuff. I guess it sat there so who knows? I don't know why, but it.
Yeah.
And so I had to remember all the things. How do you get into this? What code? Which paper? Where did I hide that code? Where this and that?
Yeah.
And it was like a whole freaking thing. And I got it to work. So now it's working,
Mhm.
right? And sure enough, I'm messing around with it just to and but I can't do the same on this computer that's actually even newer, but
Mhm.
it's like from 2009.
Yeah.
This computer that I'm using right now, I can do virtually everything. But we're talking 2009, dude.
Yeah.
I can do virtually everything, editing this, and that.
Hmm.
Okay, I can't. I used to have Pro Tools installed in this computer, but this is Windows 7.
Hmm.
Um, and what happens is that when it became Windows 7, the older model that I'm using for the music
Hmm.
no longer would install. So I had to go on the internet. I found a way to get it installed through a rigging way of doing it,
Hmm.
and it worked. And I used it until my computer had to have repairs, not like
Hmm.
a year or two ago. And so then I said, why bother reinstalling this thing? I'm not doing music recently, and so I left it be. But it would be a big hurdle for me
Hmm.
to get the install into this computer again. So my
Yeah.
question to you is, not that you would know, maybe you would, but just generally, or let's see if somebody would know. Could you have a computer? I know. Well, let me just ask the question. Could you have a computer that's a Windows 7 or a Windows 10 or a Windows whatever? Install, I know you can do this, install another operating system as a subcategory in your system, such as Windows XP, and have it there, and then open it. And instead of installing software that's difficult on your um, Windows 10 or whatever, you install it into that Windows XP within your Windows 10. And then that way, every time you open up your Windows XP within your Windows 10, you can
You
use
can
the
run that.
Is that
Um,
something? Is that something that can be done?
this is way above my pay grade. This is not anything I've ever done. Steve might know. You might be able to run what they call a virtual machine, but I don't know if that virtual machine can be a, a, a different operating system than the one you're running. I don't think you can have two operating systems on your computer, but I don't know if you can run, say, a Windows XP emulator in virtual machine that would let you load that program, say, on a external drive and run it. I really do not know if that's possible.
I've had Windows 7
Hmm.
plus Windows XP as a virtual machine.
Hmm.
I forgot that that was the word. But once my computer got screwed up and I had to take it for repairs, and I re-uploaded everything, I no longer had that secondary virtual machine. But I never tried doing that I'm asking you about. Um, because I would assume that you have the virtual machine and you can go in and use the programs within it. What
You can install as a virtual machine or put a second operating system on a different hard drive partition. So talk to Steve. There's your answer. This is way above my pay grade. I never got into that because I know me. It's too if there's a way I can screw it up, I'll find it.
can I put? Let me ask Steve about this. Can I put an operating system so I can do it in a secondary secondary drive or partition? But let's say a secondary drive, and then use that to upload to that drive, and then that program that only works in XP will work in XP. If that makes any sense. In other words, let's say I have a second drive. I install Windows XP in that second drive within this machine, and it's sitting there in that drive. And then I go and open up Windows XP within that, and load up some software. It'll operate
So
within
I
that
take it
environment of
I
XP.
I take it you're asking Steve about this because I have no idea.
Yeah, I just threw that out there. Let's see what he says. But just as a side note.
Yeah.
Oh
Um
yeah, yeah. Okay.
yes, but you would only run one system at a time. I get the feeling you and Steve are going to spend a lot of time in Hangouts working through this from here on out.
No, I understand what he's saying. So, if you're using XP,
Mhm.
you're operating under XP's rules,
Yeah,
operating system. So, you're not going to be working back and forth. You have to stick to that.
yeah.
So that kind
The
of
only the only thing I would say is like I just said that I've got 4 computers running XP here. I hell I ought to send you one. Like you want an old computer, but um it the only thing that I would say would be not to put that computer online. simply because it's no longer supported, and malware of any kind is going to be basically a death sentence for it. You know,
Yeah.
I used Windows XP for that program Mach 3, but I disabled everything on it. There was no way it could go online because I knew it had reached end of life, and anything, there have been so many exploits, there are so many ways that somebody could hack into that thing. If I put it online, it would probably be a brick within the first week. So I wouldn't let it go online if you're going to do something like that. But why would you want to go online? I mean, you're using a tool for music. You don't. It doesn't need to go online. You know. So.
Unless you need to make some sort of update or whatever, but you can always take a little stick,
Hmm.
memory stick or whatever you want to call it,
Hmm.
do it with your regular computer,
Yeah.
scan it, make sure it's all copacetic,
On the up, and then take it over. Yeah.
and then take it over. So you could do that. Okay, well, yeah. I mean, well, currently that's what my laptop is doing, but I mean, we're talking. She's been around. I mean,
Yeah.
she's got years on her, but she's work. I mean, even one of the hinges for when you open up the screen
Hmm.
is wonky. So it's kind of
Yeah.
like the lap. It's like everything. But we're talking almost 20 years, dude.
Yeah. I've got a laptop in here I haven't turned on in. It's been at least 2 years. It's been at least 2 years since I've fired up that laptop. And I used to fire it up at least, well, when I was working, I'm a recovering real estate agent for those who don't know. When I was working real estate, I used it every day. But April of 2018, I retired. And basically, I would fire it up once or twice a year to let it update. It runs Windows 10. But, and there's always a serious stack of updates for it. But I haven't even turned it on, I don't think, in 2 years. I need to get it out and do that just so that it's updated.
Yeah.
But
Um. No, nothing. That it was just that. Uh. Talking about music, I showed you in the green room.
mhm.
So there's this guy for you guys out there. There's this whole underbelly of American musicians or musicians across the world, anyhow. But in this case, an American musician that never quite got a leg up and into what we would say or call mainstream. Let's say there's tons of them because, as you know, guitar sales have always been, and so people like that and they practice in their rooms. There's this guy that appears. There's a documentary of him, and his name is unknown. I'll tell you what his name is.
Unknown Hinson.
His name is Unknown Henson, and just so that you can picture it or look it up, he appears on a stage, a rinky-dink type, old schoolish stage, and he's got black hair, jetted, receding with the widow's peak slightly or a lot. These incredibly darkened vampire eyebrows, and he's got these two sideboards that are thick and plush, and he's got a jaw that can probably break walnuts, and he talks very like country, back of the woods, came out of a recent
Big
uh
time.
yeah, he's got that. So but here's the thing. Oh, and he plays the hillbilly rockabilly backwoods
Guitar, yeah.
character, but with the context of a vamp. So okay, I'll say it like this: he's like a backwoods, um, hillbilly, rockabilly, Tex, um, gunslinging, vampire. It's a sort of a culmination of those images from American cinema and music, like Buddy Holly a little bit, not really, but just if you squished it all together, to get that orange juice, it would come out to this guy, and it's really shocking when you listen to him because he sounds like he just got out of the freaking prison, and he's looking to settle scores. But here's the catch, and we were talking about this. And he's a normal guy.
Yeah.
He's a regular musician. Well, he's a good musician, but he's like a regular dude like anybody else. But he took on this persona that's got this mysterious, and it's awesome because look, I got chills because it really reminds me of some sort of thing that's familiar but not. Plus, he plays kick-ass music, in my opinion. Um, Unheard of, like in popular, whatnot. But I liked it. I liked it, and then I shared it with Mark, and I asked Mark, well, what do you think? I mean, what's your first impression? And he said something to the effect of, "It's kind of odd," or some word like that.
I said, yeah, he's kind of out there, but the guy can play. He can play guitar.
He could play guitar. But then I told Mark, well, Mark, the extra things, And by the way, Mark, I didn't tell you this bit. You know why he's called Unknown Henson?
Mm-mm.
Okay, just check this out. He says, "Well, my name is Unknown Henson. My mom's name was Henson, and I never knew my daddy, so he's unknown." He said it like that, dude.
Well,
And I
the
was like,
thing,
go ahead.
the thing about it is that's all an act.
Mhm.
It's all an act, and that's what I thought was funny about it. His name is Stuart Baker.
Yeah.
If you've ever been on the Cartoon Network at night, it becomes Adult Swim.
Yes. Yeah. Back in the day.
There is an animated sitcom, a cartoon on there called Squidbillies.
Yeah.
He was one of the voices on that show. He's also a voice actor, and
But
that's just one of them that he did.
but in the documentary, because it's kind of like a fake-ish documentary, but I like it. I like it because they're creating their own little. It's the same thing the Beach Boys did. The Beach Boys would hire out great writers,
Mm-hmm.
and yes, they're telling the truth. This guy really isn't, but they're telling the truth. But they're making it. The writers are making the Beach Boys story literally, or lit. How would you say in literary form? In
In
literary
literary
form,
form, yeah.
they're enhancing it by being sophisticated in telling the Beach Boys story. So when you read the Beach Boys story, you're like, holy crap, I want to buy that album. And so at least me, or I guess
Mm-hmm.
it's geared for people like me that like that sort of thing. But most people, I would assume, kind of dig that, a good story. And so he's doing the same thing. And so in it, he says, in the documentary, he says, and he's also known for having a wild trigger finger in the middle of a show and will shoot off a freaking gun. And then in some of the images, you'll see him he's playing and he'll stop and he'll just shoot a gun. But you can tell it's a fake gun.
Uh-huh.
But it blows like a little bit of smoke. But it's all to add to the thing, dude.
The illusion, yeah. Well, it's you made one comparison. It's no different, really, than Kiss or any of these other
Yeah.
performers that are like Guar or
Yeah.
any of these other bands that put on all the makeup and they do the masquerade thing and all the
Yeah.
pyrotechnics and the huge stage show and everything. It's no different than that, although it's writ small.
Right.
But I mean, the guy had a 30-year career doing that.
Yeah.
So I mean,
Just picture if you remember Buddy Holly, remember back in the day in the 50s and such, where they would wear a suit, but they would have those ties that were like two strings with beads at the end of them.
mhm.
That sort of look, that cowboy. He's got that, but he's got that. Just that upholstered Cadillac. Um, he's got that sort of something, and then his face lends itself the way the chin is chiseled like in a square, and
Yeah.
his eyebrow. He's catering to this vampiric slash cowboy. I just don't know what to say. I like the theme. It's almost it's theatrical. It's theatrical. I like it.
Yeah,
If they don't see it, they're not gonna.
there
Pick
is
it out.
there if you look at still pictures of him and everything, you can tell the sideburns are pasted on. You know, the
Yeah,
hair is combed back and his eyebrows are dyed,
yeah,
much like Groucho Marx. I mean, he didn't go so far as using the gaffer tape mustache, but he came close, you know.
yeah.
But
And
you can
people
see it's 100% an act.
absolutely like once you look at it. But you know what's cool? Oh, he's he's got. I'm looking through. He's got a picture mark
Mhm.
where he's got that face, and then he's holding a bottle, and on the bottle it says liquid chicken. Like even throwing.
If you're gonna go for the gold, you know.
Yeah, but it's so freaking awesome. Because think about it, he's playing into all these things. He wants the audience to have an experience, and maybe I'm overselling it, but if you like horror movies and you like retro Americana and you like the rock and roll, he's got a little bit of all that stuff,
He's
and
kind of
and it,
like a toned down version of Alice Cooper. He's not playing the bad guy. He's just the guy.
that's exactly it. That's
Mhm.
exactly it. He's doing an Alice Cooper, but Alice Cooper's taking it into some weird
Well,
place.
see, Alice Cooper always likes to play the villain. And if you've ever have you ever seen Alice Cooper live?
I've never.
He dies like 4 times on stage. Sometimes they hang him, sometimes they guillotine. I mean, it's all special effects and what have you, because he dies 4 times a night for 3 nights in your city and then goes on to the next city. So it's obviously all stage show and what have you.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, why not? There's an audience for everything and everybody. Why not? Go for it, man.
Oh yeah.
But
Oh yeah. Oh
here's
yeah.
the thing, he retired in 2012.
Okay. Well, I mean,
Unknown
he's
Hinson did. He retired in 2012. He's 70 years old now and is just enjoying life as an unknown.
well dude, he left a great mini
Mhm.
break in the fabric of rock and roll and
Mhm.
rockabilly and whatnot and blues because he does blues really actually he does
Yeah.
Jimi Hendrix numbers and he really kicks butt.
Mhm.
Um, but anyways, as a secondary that you we didn't talk about, but I'll just throw it out there. There's a guy that popped up from Texas. This guy wasn't from Texas, but this guy is from Texas. Um, and he pops up with a story that he's a pig farmer, that he's I don't know this and that, and he does the same thing that this guy's doing. He creates a persona
Mhm.
of a guy that's somewhere out in Texas, and he decides to move to California because that's where Merle Haggard is supposedly living. And so he moves to California, and Merle Haggard bit it disappears, but then he becomes a a producer for other albums,
Mhm.
and in the meantime, he's putting out like I guess let's call it a new wave, but very Texas country themed albums where it's weird. It's weird, and so, but he's not none of those things, and that he was in jail, and that he's this, and at the end of the day, you know what he is? You want
Mm.
to know what he is?
Oh.
A regular, normal guy that decided to create a fantastical story to to help him propel his freaking music. And it's freaking awesome. Yes, you can say, man, they're lying. This is not the truth. But it's all for show. It's great.
Yeah. I mean, well, but it's a character that you take on, you know? People go see Alice Cooper to see Alice Cooper. They don't go to see Vincent Fournier.
No,
They don't know who Vince Fournier is
no.
unless they've, got a trivia book or something. But they go to see Alice Cooper. They
Yeah.
want to see the fame, the masquerade, the makeup. They want to see that stuff. So, yeah, more
Why
power
not?
to them, man. More power to
Yeah, no,
them.
and if you do it in a nice way, like Henson
Mm-hmm.
did, unknown
Mm-hmm.
Henson, um, it's not for everybody, obviously,
No,
but
but
nothing is.
what performer is for everybody? Yeah,
No.
you know. Jim Dockrell, I did a little bit of looking up. Jim Dockrell said there was a performer I saw called Frank Soda. I looked him up. Soda Man gave me a different result. Wore a TV on his head that exploded at one point during the show. Now, I didn't see any reference to that, but I'll quote this. They say Frank Soda is a wild and talented Toronto guitarist and vocalist with a frenzied sense of humor. Soda is the Great White North's version of Frank Zappa. Is that the truth there, Jim? Because this sounds like a guy I need to explore. Is he the Great White North's version of Frank Zappa?
Frank Zappa was out there, my friend.
He was out there. He is, his name is, I won't say it's a household name, but if you say Frank Zappa, people have heard the name. But
Did you
probably 90% of the people who have heard the name have never heard any of his music.
you want to know a good book to read?
Mm-hmm.
I like biographies, and it's been a long time, so it's not like I'm an avid book reader currently.
Mm-hmm.
But back in the day, growing up,
Yeah.
is I forget the title, but it's his biography.
Mm-hmm.
It's a book about this thick.
Yeah.
It's not a thick book,
Mm-hmm.
but he explains his life.
Yeah.
As he experienced it, and you would have no, if you were not to read that or whatever, you would have no thought that it would be what it is, because he, imagine a 1950s American family or Italian of Italian origins living in the middle of the desert out west. I think it was either New Mexico or something like that, close to a where they did uh, bomb explosions.
Oh, yeah. Okay. You're talking about New Mexico. Um, oh, I can't think of the name of the place. Oh my God. Los Alamos.
Well, this was, I can't remember, so I can't say. I'm
Mhm.
just giving you the general. But he grows up in an environment like that with friends that are in
Mhm.
that area too, and a lot of them are like military people.
Mhm.
And he's growing up in a scenario that's very American in that context.
Mhm.
And then things just, but he's intelligently telling you in a creative way. It's so amazing, and you're following through the steps, and it's like, holy smoke! It was a fun read for me. Um, but it's not what you would expect for him, because people would look at him and think that he's this druggie, and he's not. He claimed, and I believe him, because no druggie would go for broke and say I reject drugs completely, and yet he explained that he did,
Mhm.
and it's like, and yet you turned out this insane. Um,
Well, but name an artist that isn't a little, half a bubble off plum. I mean, that's all part of that artistic streak. Is I don't know if it's if it's an innate uh, if it's an innate ability to look at things from a different angle, or to just let your mind wander. Just kind of explore and push and see where it can go. I got this sound by doing this and this and this. What if I took that and now I played it backwards and put reverb on it? It takes an artist to think in those terms, you know. Now that doesn't mean that nobody could do it. You could play something backwards, a tape backwards, and add reverb to it, and it would probably sound cool. But to come up with that idea in the first place is part of the artistic thing that I'm talking about. I don't know if people are born with that or if that's something that you develop, but just the ability to look at something mundane and make art or music out of it, to me, that's a whole nother level. It really is a whole nother level.
you know what I see it as? I see it as, roughly, a big part of it
Mhm,
is like, let's say the 60s, the Beatles come out. Now,
mhm.
it's true that the Beatles are copying earlier albums, and they're trying to
They were
imitate.
covering, yeah.
Well, yeah, they were covering. They're trying to imitate as best they can the sounds that they were growing up with,
Yeah.
but them doing it. But since they're not those people with those specific choices that are very minute but build
Hmm.
up, they end up sounding like the Beatles covering those old songs.
Right.
But then the Beatles got successful and they start experimenting, which is unique to them in that
Hmm.
they have their unique. But they started trying to copy, but they just end up sounding like themselves, copying. Well, all these American bands like the Beatles, and they're like trying to copy the Beatles,
Yeah.
and but they can't get it because they're not the Beatles, but they sound slightly close to it, and then they start sounding like themselves. So it's a derivative of a derivative of derivative that's spreading in all sorts of
Yeah.
directions, creating music of the 20th century the way we heard it. It's freaking
And
it.
there's a reason why there was a sudden explosion of 12-string guitar in the 60s. And it was all because of George Harrison and that Rickenbacker. I
In
mean,
Help or Hard Day's Night.
Hard Day's Night.
Yeah,
I mean, you can ask guys like Roger McGuinn, you can talk to people, all of these different groups, and they'll tell you, "Oh yeah, we were trying to copy that Beatles sound because we dug it, because it spoke to us." And there was an explosion of 12-string guitar in the 60s. It kind of died down about the time the Beatles stopped using it. And then suddenly it just kind of, you pick up a 12 string now, it better be acoustic. Don't be playing no electric 12 string.
yeah. It starts to spread out into
Hmm.
different influences, and they try to copy. Like I was trying to copy Eric Clapton
Hmm.
and Jimi Hendrix, and my intention wasn't. You end up sounding like yourself
Hmm.
because you rely on certain crutches or certain little tricks of the trade
Hmm.
that funnel a specific thing that you copied anyways, but your interpretation of it just ends up sounding like you anyhow. So
Um,
there's no blues song that
hmm.
I could play trying to imitate, I don't know, Buddy Guy or whoever the hell, that I would. Yes, I could come very. There's people dedicated to doing that, but if you're not doing a cover band for the sake of cover band, and you just end up sort of sounding like yourself.
Well, and that's why people will sit there and say, "Oh, look, he's trying to play Eric Clapton. He doesn't sound anything like Eric Clapton." No, he's never going to sound like Eric Clapton. He's not Eric Clapton.
No, unless you have the voice and you have the tech, unless you're doing everything copy, 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 copy. But most musicians are just picking little pieces that they like
Hmm.
and
Yes,
shoving it
and
together.
techniques and putting techniques together. The hardest time I ever had trying to discern one player from another, because usually, Clapton's style, how he plays, you know, pick another guitarist, Jimi Hendrix style, how he plays. You have no problem discerning who is playing what.
Yeah.
But there's it was recorded in Canada, I want to say, Stevie Ray Vaughan and Albert King in session. I challenge you to tell me who is playing guitar at any one particular time, because Stevie modeled his style after Albert King. And the only way you can tell is by watching the video. I got caught out so many times thinking that's Albert King playing and it's Stevie, or thinking that's Stevie playing and it was Albert King.
There's a video or a short.
And it had nothing to do with guitar tone. It had everything to do with their style,
Yeah, yeah,
the way.
yeah. Yeah, they have. Well, Stevie does have in that video, if I recall well, a deeper tone, but they're
Mhm.
playing virtually the same style.
Right.
But
Stevie
Stevie's
on his old Strat, and Albert King's on a Gibson Flying Wing,
flying V. Yeah.
Flying
Um,
V.
the I guess what I was gonna say, because I forgot, because when you said flying V, or I
Sorry,
said flying, no, you said flying
I
V
said
wing.
Flying Wing. Yeah, I got it mixed up with the airplane. I do that.
No, and then I was looking for the answer, but in doing so, I lost my little my little crumb trail down
Your
the
train of
path.
thought left the station.
Yeah, because I was going to say something pertinent to the thing, and that was, well, heck,
But it's it's ding dong near impossible to imitate unless you really study and dedicate to that, to the study of that style, because you I think you're 100% right. You can't help but inject some of yourself into it, and that's going to be different. I'm not saying it's better, I'm not saying it's worse, I'm just saying it's going to be a little bit different because you
now
can't help but inject your personality into it.
now Jimi Hendrix was the first one of firsts
Hmm.
in that, although he was doing the rhythm and blues and different bands, he was doing the
Hmm.
blues and he was copying,
Hmm.
practicing BB King and Albert King and all the back in the day. But even though he was pulling from all these sources, he ended up, and I don't know if it's appreciated, but it's appreciated by many people, but the distinction that where he took the guitar from where it existed before to the um like through the forests of the unknown that he took it to, where he allowed for distortion to really just encompass the thing and yet
Right.
hold it down so you can control it, plus the decisions that he was making in the guitar that didn't make sense compared to what came before. He was the epitome of the guy.
The explorer. He
Yeah,
was the
he
explorer.
was the epitome of rock and roll guitar,
Well,
and anything that came before and after,
and
he changed stuff.
and
Master.
he gave Fender fits because he kept blowing up amplifiers and forcing them to try to make them stronger to be able to withstand what he was doing to them. They really had to work hard to get him equipment that would survive him.
When we were kids, we pulled a band together called Womanfish, and our bass
Oh.
player said one day, "Hey man," to all of us, "I got a name for the band." They're like, "Okay, what is it?" He says, "Womanfish," and we were like, all of us are like, what? I mean, that. He says, "No. Think about it. It can have multiple meanings." And we're like, and after a
Name
little bit,
one.
well, he named a few. I'm not gonna
uh,
mention them here.
okay.
Um, and so we finally conceded and say, okay, fine, screw it. One name's as good as another.
Yeah.
And under that name, we went and recorded after we practiced. Our drummer wasn't a drummer. Our drummer was a guitar player, but he took the role for drumming so that because I was a guitar player, but I couldn't play drums to for any. I mean, I was guitar, but not drum. And then the singer. And we went into and the bass player. We went into the studio and each person laid down their tracks. And then when it came down to me, I wanted to copy what I had read in his thick biography
Hmm.
of Jimi Hendrix, where he would always push all the buttons to the limit.
Hmm.
And I said, no, I need to capture that sound. But my songs that I was writing didn't necessarily require that, and you could get away with not doing that. But I wanted to duplicate that sound, so they locked me in this room, and I turned everything
These
up,
go to 11.
and the thing was like it was like, and I played, and when it came down to lay out my guitar, I was playing the lead, with the wah wah, and they're sitting through the window, and all of a sudden my finger got jammed and I started slipping, and they said, "Keep going, keep going, keep going." I was like, and I couldn't get my bound, but I was running with it because they were telling me to keep going, and I'm doing all these weird things, and because I slipped in the wrong moment, and the song ends with me. It sounds like it works, but it was just me trying to find my
Panicking.
panicking, and that's how it was saved on the track. And nothing, and so it reminds me of, because yeah, the
Have you
image,
played that track lately?
it's on cassette, and I don't have anything to play
Ah,
it with through.
oh man, that's
I have to
sad.
solve for that. I have to get something to record, to transfer it.
Mhm. Okay. Well, Dang.
Yeah, it's funny as hell.
Yeah, that's some funny stuff. I what can I say? Having never had that kind of an experience, I'm not a musician. The
Go,
only thing
Eli.
I can play is the stereo.
Keep going, Eli. Keep going. I'm like, it's like slipping down a
Uh,
hall that's just been mopped.
mhm.
I was slipping down that hall, and with all the distortion, the loud volume and stuff. And then I came out of the room, and
Mhm.
like, dude, that was awesome. Listen, I said, dude, but I messed up. He said, no, dude, it was great. It was great. But I stayed with it because all they cared about was the wildness of it. But how
Mhm.
am I going to play this again?
Yeah. Have you ever um, watched that documentary? It's free on YouTube with ads. It's called The Wrecking Crew.
Yeah,
I've referenced it a couple of times.
yeah,
There are a few times in that movie where they talk about how the Wrecking Crew played the actual music that was recorded on the record. And then they would have to bring the band in and teach them how to play that song. So when they went out to tour, they could play it. And I'm trying to remember which band it was. Their drummer was talking to the Wrecking Crew drummer, and I don't remember which drummer it was. And he was like, I wish the hell you hadn't have done that because I can't do that. I can't play that. And the guy said, sit down, I'll show you. And I worked with him for about 8 hours straight and said, you know what? You're right. You can't do that.
yeah.
But so they had to come up with a simplified drum part
For
for
that
this
part.
tune for him to be able to play it on tour. But it never sounded that way live because there's certain
Yeah.
things they just couldn't do.
When Brian Wilson was using them,
Hmm.
and he wasn't, so it was just Brian Wilson and them.
Hmm.
The Beach Boys were off touring, and they came back from
Hmm.
a tour. But he was now working on Pet Sounds,
Hmm.
and when they came into the studio, and they'd hear a bass going plung
Hmm.
and a trombone going, "Whirr," but there's no context to it, and he's just recording little parts.
Hmm.
They were taken aback. They're like,
Hmm.
"What are you doing here? This does not sound like the Beach Boys. What's going on here?" He says, "This is going to be great. You're going to love it." But everything that was perceived by people coming in to see what's going on
Hmm.
was really just odd, out of place. It doesn't make sense. And then he started putting stuff together, and they were blown away. However, um, Mike Love
Hmm.
wasn't too keen necessarily on
No,
certain things.
right.
There was always a little bit of that. He was an important part of the band, but the point is that the vision that Brian Wilson brought to the Beach Boys began to be expanded during the Pet Sounds era,
Hmm.
and they weren't. It took a while, but now it's become one of the most loved albums.
Well, and I never understood the reason for that. I kind of do. Understand Mike Love's animosity. He wanted to be more involved, and Brian Wilson is just no. I'm the guy, kind of guy. And but there is nothing on the Pet Sounds album that's out of place. It
No,
is 100% Beach Boys.
well, it is now.
It is what, but even then,
No, but not up to
the
not to what
most
they
I
were.
think I think the most experimental tune was Good Vibrations.
No,
But
dude, the whole album is freaking out of. If you consider Barbara Rand prior and that sort of thing, or Little Deuce Coupe and such, and then
yeah,
you
but
think
see,
of
that's an evolution because that was their beach time. That was their cars and girls kind of thing because that's what was in vogue. But by the time Pet Sounds came out, that was kind of going away. And so I see Pet Sounds as just the evolution, but there's nothing out of place.
no, in retrospect, and yes, I know what you're trying to say at the time, but I'm saying from the position of you being the Beach Boys coming from a tour of Europe or wherever,
Yeah.
and then you go into the studio, and as opposed to a Chuck Berry chunka
Hmm.
chunka with surfer sounds or quartet sounds, you're getting symphonic sounds,
Right.
and they're chunked off in weird places, and there's no. So yeah, for them at that moment, it was like whoa, 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 and they say as much that
Hmm.
they were taken aback to what was going on, and then they say, well, but he was a genius,
Yeah.
in doing so. So yeah, it's hard to bring in new stuff
Hmm.
if you're in a band and they're expecting you to sound like Metallica or like whatever, and now you're sounding like I don't know what. Um, it throws people aback because are people gonna like this or do I like
Well,
this?
let's look at Wouldn't It Be Nice? Wouldn't it be nice? There is absolutely nothing about that song that isn't Beach Boys. Nothing. And
In
that's the opening
retrospect,
track.
though, here's the problem: we know we can't separate the Beach Boys from "Wouldn't It Be Nice." We can't do it. I can't do it.
No, no, we can't. But I can only remember what I remember from back in during that time. And
Well,
back during that time, maybe within music circles, there was a lot more. Whoa. But I can remember my mother and my father saying, "Oh, cool, a new Beach Boys song." But if you take All Summer Long, we've been having fun all summer long. If you take that and you put it next to Wouldn't It Be Nice, you would expect them to be off of the same album. What I'm getting at is there's nothing on Pet Sounds that isn't Beach Boys. I get what you're saying. At the time, a lot of the techniques, a lot of the methods, and a lot of the sounds that were being put together were new and revolutionary. But I see that as the natural evolution of the Beach Boys.
of course. Look, let's be clear. If you think of the Beatles
Hmm.
from their first couple of albums, and if you were to bring the Beatles from the future to the Beatles of the past, a Sergeant Pepper's,
Hmm.
it would blow their mind.
It would absolutely.
My point being that for them at the time, now for you at the time, you were a little kid,
Hmm.
there was a whole era of surfer life going back in time
Hmm.
where they had kicked off doing such things
Right.
that was a norm. But for you, it matched the
It matched the Beach Boys. That was a Beach Boys song, and
well
that's all there is to it.
because it was the Beach Boys. All
Right.
I'm trying to get at is that there's a progression like you're suggesting. It's just that
Hmm.
at the time, I guess I couldn't be any clearer. When the
Now,
Beach Boys walked in, they were shocked. Let's put it that way.
now, if you were to take Pet Sounds and put it right after their first album, yes, I could see where that would be a huge departure. I I would agree with that. Just like if you were to take Love Me Do and put that next to Sergeant Pepper, that would be a huge departure. But that's missing everything between. That's missing all the albums in between and that natural evolution. I get what you're saying. I get what you're saying. That the way it was produced, the way it was created, some of the sounds that were used, some of the
Yeah.
instruments that were used, and everything. I get what you're saying, but what I'm
Even they
saying
say it.
is, yeah, at the time I could see how it would have blown them away.
Yeah, even they, the actual
But
musicians in the band, say it.
mhm, yeah, because again, it was being invented at the time. He couldn't get the
Right.
sound he wanted out of the band, so he had to do it any way he could.
Yeah.
He was inventing it.
And by the way,
And
the
that's what the Beatles were doing as well.
well, yeah, many people were doing it parallel, in their ways, but also the idea of bringing in symphonic stuff
Hmm.
or orchestral stuff,
Hmm.
um, which was beginning to be done too. But it has to be emphasized that the Beach Boys, although people think of them as a little surf group, which they kind of
No,
were,
no, no. They were much more than that. But
but
yeah,
they were much more than that.
that's how they started.
Right, that's how they started. Well, they're also this, which is psychedelic, but there's type of psychedelic because that album is like the problem is that Brian Wilson and the Beach Boys were very much if there's a normal side of psychedelic or mind expanding and there's an exaggerated side, or like a more accessible to most human side,
Mhm.
and one that's like for the loonies, the Beatles would be for the loonies and the Beach Boys would be for a more stable audience that can accept these new sounds because they kind of fit in. But the extreme Beatles sounds, I don't know if I'm even boxing that in right, but I'm trying to say is that they're both creative and psychedelic, but just
Mhm.
one of them harkens to
Well,
something that I can't quite place.
just my opinion, I think it comes down to the Beach Boys harmonies, because it's weird to say, when they first came out, rock and roll was still kind of, it was getting accepted, and there wasn't it wasn't seen as the rebellion that it was in the 50s, when the people weren't smashing records and oh, this rock and roll has got to go away, and this, that, and the other. And
Yeah,
Elvis, them shooting Elvis from the chest up, only showing him in close up because they wouldn't show him, dancing and all that other good stuff. But so it was being more and more accepted, and it was becoming more and more mainstream. And for parents to actually like the Beach Boys, they were seen as nice.
that's the key.
They were seen as clean and nice. They always had the button up shirts. Their hair was a little bit longer, but they had that shaggy
Yeah,
California surfer look, you know,
they were
but
just
they were
kids.
always clean.
They're good American kids, you know. They're not these weirdos with the long hair,
Exactly.
exaggerated and smoking the reefer.
The Rolling Stones were always seen as dirty. They were the anti-Beatles. That was what they tried to be, and that's what they wanted to be. They were the anti-Beatles.
Yeah,
And the Who was just there to get loud. They were just there to push everything and get loud. So um, it even though the Beach Boys were getting into psychedelic at the time, it wasn't seen that way,
yeah. It wasn't
because
seen rude.
they're the nice clean boys,
Yeah,
you know.
yeah. I agree. I agree, and that allowed them with a lot of wiggle room.
Hmm.
Oh, they're
Literally
awesome.
and figuratively.
Yeah, they're awesome. And that song that you were mentioning from that album, or at least,
Wouldn't it
uh,
be nice?
it be nice? No, the other one.
Oh, all summer long.
Good Vibrations.
Good vibrations. Okay, yeah,
That's a freaking crazy song.
it is.
And even today, and I mean, I don't care. Well, maybe it's because I'm biased, but boy, that's a crazy song.
It is.
Even to this day, that's when that comes on, you're like, man, that's brilliant. At least I think.
Mhm.
Even today, when that song comes on, I'm still like, man, that's freaking awesome. Okay, it just
Yeah. And when
and
you
that
think about the technology that they had, because there were no synthesizers back then, they hadn't been invented yet. When you heard strings, they were strings.
yeah,
If you heard a cello, it was a cello. If you
yeah,
heard a French horn, it was a French horn. It wasn't somebody on a keyboard, you know?
yeah. The Beatles got into that organ stuff,
Hmm.
which was even it was
The
cool.
Mellotron and the Hammond organ. And yeah.
Yeah, I'm sorry, but you can't. Oh, I will say this. I was about to say the same thing that I always say, which harkens to something like all bands today suck or most of them or something. But I'll pause because there's one band that came out in the early 2000s called Beulah,
Hmm.
and Beulah, yeah, it sounds like a toss throwaway whatnot. But in their music, I bought their album, and boy, I love the whole album.
Hmm.
Every track, I enjoyed every track because they are paying tribute to all the stuff back in the day.
Hmm.
But they're doing it, convincing me, at least for me as a musician, that they're original but paying tribute at the same time, and I like that. When I heard it, I was blown. They have a song called "Popular Mechanics for Broken Hearts,"
Okay.
um, and their album is called "The Coast Is Never Clear."
Okay.
and it has a very basic image of, I guess you'd call it a thumbnail type look of a coast of an island with orange, reds, and yellows and such. And I kind of like that band. It may not be for everybody's taste, but I kind of like them. So
Um,
it's that attaching of cool little tidbits from the past and reinventing them that is exciting to me. Um, so that you
okay.
sound like yourself, but you still have some cool little messages or Easter eggs
Mhm. Yeah,
inside what you're doing. I like that.
they were active from '96 to 2004. They
So
were
short lived.
they were a band out of they were a band out of San Francisco, and you said it's called "The Coast Is Never Clear."
Yeah.
Yeah, that was 2001.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Okay.
They're just regular guys. A lot of these people are just students,
Hmm.
and they get together and they say, let's make a band."
Yeah.
And
We're putting a band.
if they have a little bit of that, you know what I don't like, and I never really did, although some of their stuff is cool. When it's just punk,
Yeah.
it doesn't interest me much. I do like some of the punk stuff, but it's kind of like, man, have some for me, for my biased taste. Man, have some like dignity with, and give us a little bit of Easter egg, you know, cool stuff, and let's enjoy the, not just I don't care, which is fine, but in context, every song, give me a break. I don't want every song to be a I'm in the back of the freaking like gutter and screw society. Okay, fine, you can do that, but give me a break.
Yeah.
And so
Yeah.
I don't like it that way.
Never got into punk. I mean, I can take it in small doses, but that's about it. I'm just okay. Not my style. Next. You know, I,
What was
I, I don't know. I call myself a cultural infidel. I've never been one to really follow the trend. And, disco is gaining popularity. I went back and rediscovered the Beatles, and then got into a few other bands. I went through a streak, short streak of country western music, just anything. Get me away from disco,
I could picture
you know,
you in like around
and blues.
1976 or let me just throw this at you.
Mhm.
You're not gonna
70.
agree. You're not gonna agree or like this one, but I just for some reason in my ridiculous.
If it's anything but blue jeans, t-shirt, and a pair of tennis shoes, or maybe logger boots, you're wrong.
But let me throw this out. I could picture. See, it only works if I try to be serious, but whatever. I could picture you back somewhere in 76, 77, or whatever, sitting at home waiting to go out in the evening. You're sitting in one of those chairs, those retractable ones that are comfy, with the yellow 1970s lamp sitting on the table, your headphones and the stereo with the squiggly, and you're sitting there and you're waiting to go out, but it's not yet time, so you're just
Mhm.
enjoying some tracks on your
Mhm.
8 track, and you're sitting back and you're just listening to Last Chance Romance Tonight. Choo 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 choo. Last chance. And I can see you enjoy. See, you even had to do this. Look, you even had to hold your mouth because you're like you even did this. Look, you son of a. So, you tell me, does that sound like something you remember?
The lamp was red, not yellow. I didn't have that chair by the stereo. The headset did have the squiggly wire. Um, that chair, the recliner was in the family room. The stereo was in the living room. And I was probably listening at that time, 75, 76. I was probably listening to the Beatles. I was probably listening to, if I had my eyes closed and laid back and relaxed, I was probably listening to side two of Abbey Road again.
Well,
I,
that's good.
I mean, maybe I would have Let It Be on, but Let It Be, I tended to listen to Let It Be when I was in a little bit more of a jazzy mood. When I wanted to lay back and relax, it was all "Here Comes the Sun," doo doo doo. You know,
Or how about welcome? This is the Lawrence Welk live album.
that was my mother. That was my mother, Bobby Vinton and Johnny Mathis and Nat King Cole. Yeah, that was my mother.
And you know what's funny about that though? Because when I was little and they would play the reruns
Hmm.
on PBS, if you remember that there was a time in the '80s that they had back to back.
Oh God, my grandparents loved Lawrence Welk. If he was on TV, they were watching it.
Well, my mom used to play that. She loved
Hmm.
it.
Hmm.
She loved that era. She loved all that, the Paul Anka.
Hmm.
And I would walk into the room and sit there and watch because I was amazed. It's not like I was enjoying it in terms of like, man, I wish I had that rhine suit, on. But I was enjoying it in that, man, this is a spectacle what I'm looking
Hmm.
at. So I enjoyed it at that level, but now I feel slightly endeared.
Hmm.
It's not like I'm playing it on, But my
No,
point
but
is,
it brings back that sense of nostalgia from your childhood that you associate with home.
yeah,
So
exactly.
yeah, I mean,
Let me turn
one
off the
hundred
light.
percent.
My lights are blinking.
Mm-hmm.
My headlights are blinking.
Yep. There are certain things that do that for me too. There are certain songs my mother used to play. Bobby Vinton, "Blue Velvet." I hear "Blue Velvet" and I still think about her sitting cross-legged in front of the stereo, swaying back and forth to the music. And I remember that as a little kid. You know, 5 or 6 years old, just singing at the top of her lungs. Was dad's at work and everything's all taken care of. She wasn't working at the time. She didn't need to. But yeah, I remember that kind of thing. I don't know, man.
It's incredible.
Yeah, some of the places music will take you to, there are certain things that I can gauge when they happened based on where we lived at the time because we moved around a lot. There are other things that I can gauge what music I was listening to. Like I can remember 15 years old getting the Frampton Comes Alive album, you know, um, and it just kind of the same later on with Boston, 16 when Boston album was released. I was like, holy cow, man, who is this? But it all takes me back to that one certain time. I can remember people, I can remember cars, I can remember places we would go, our local hangouts and what have you. And it just brings back the whole damn thing. So,
I'm lucky in a sense of growing up when I did because I had all the influence from the Cuban exile community that one could wish for,
mhm,
and all the non just straight up American, or let's call it Anglo American view of life, where they were my neighbors and they would come over and say, Eloy, come on, let's go. And where are we going? Well, my dad's going. We've got room in the back. My dad's going to the. We're going to the speedway, and the speedway. Mom, we're gonna go watch cars, and
mhm,
mom, and you have to understand that from my parents' point of view, it's not like that's something they did or
right.
were into. They were into other things that they were involved in because they are exiles, and so my mom would say, okay, and I'd freaking run across the street, and then the dad would say, his name was Don.
Mhm,
He'd say, "Jump in the back," and we'd jump in the back, and we'd be down the street in a pickup, and and these people had no notion of
mhm,
anything to do with the Cuban exile community. By the way, I'm not trying to. I'm just saying that it's incredible the duality of the situation where I'm getting all this input, enjoying things like that.
mhm,
Um, I couldn't ask for a better. everything packaged. Well, I don't know if it's everything packaged, but you get my point. There's all sorts of goodies growing up that's getting into your head that you're enjoying. Um,
Yeah.
Culturally, it's such a wonderful. So in a, I don't. Okay, I'll just to bow tie it. I don't know that if I would have grown up in Little Havana,
Mm-hmm.
that I would have had. You see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Okay, that's what I was gonna say.
Well, but you had basically the chance to explore and see things and do things that you wouldn't normally do if
Yeah,
you stuck within basically your family unit.
yeah.
You know, you and I was the same way. I got to go with friends from school. A friend called me up and said, "We're going down to Santa Cruz. Go to the beach. You want to go?" And going to the beach was a big thing. We lived, quite a ways away from the beach. My parents both worked and they didn't get a lot of time off. And when they did, we went as a family to go do something. And it wasn't to go to the beach. Mom didn't like going to the beach. What can I say? So the chance to go to the beach, heck yeah, I want to go. So you bet I took that opportunity to go. And got a sunburnt that took me like a week to recover from, but what can I tell you? It was a lot of fun. Going and exploring and doing with friends and going places that you wouldn't normally go and seeing things you wouldn't normally see and doing things you wouldn't normally do. I tried never to lose that. I don't know about you, but I saw somebody post on Facebook. They asked a question. They said, "This is a serious question. I've got a serious case of a mental block. I've kind of lost my artistic streak and I don't know where to go." When you find yourself in that funk where you're just out of ideas and don't know where to go, how do you get out of it? And
Whom?
I had to sit back and think about it. This
Oh, they
person was
asked you.
they asked just a general post to the whole group.
Okay.
And I had to sit and think about it for a second. And about the only thing I could think of that gets me out of that funk for me is still to this day go someplace I wouldn't normally go.
I do the same, Mark. It's funny.
Because if I surround myself only with what's familiar,
You get the same.
you have the same view all the time. You start to just you kind of tune it out.
Yeah.
You put on blinders and you're only seeing the familiar. I have to occasionally go someplace I wouldn't normally go or do something I wouldn't normally do or even watch a video I wouldn't normally watch. If I'm, for some reason I can't go nowhere or, don't want to go nowhere or it's 3 o'clock in the morning, just something unusual and see something that's not familiar to me. And I'm in my 60s. I still do that and still want to do that.
When I used to work as it's not advertising. It was a kind of like promoting, but there's a word for it. I can't even remember what my title was. Something to. Geez, I can't remember. I did that in the mid 2000s, early to mid 2000s. Shoot,
What was the job?
I'd go and promote different products um, to bring awareness. It was there's a word for it that I can't think of right now. Like they'd hire me to hold a guitar
Hmm.
at a and play the guitar at a wine company that's introducing a new wine. So I'd go and participate where other people, or I'd go and bring awareness to any number of products, be it flour or this or that, and provide. It was marketing. Let's call
Hmm.
it marketing. There's another
Okay.
word for it. There's
Advertising, promotion. I mean,
it was within that realm, but in
hmm
any case, I had to drive around
hmm
because they could send you somewhere different
yeah.
that you'd never expect. But I, when I was doing it for cigarettes, it was
Hmm.
these all natural. It's got the Indian on the front
Oh,
of
yeah.
it,
American Spirit. Yeah.
American Spirit. I was doing it for them,
Hmm.
and you could give them a coupon
hmm
to get a nice discounted thing, but they had to fill out a little thing or whatnot, and this and that.
Yeah.
They paid very, very well. They paid your gas. It was a good gig. Um, I found places in Miami that I would never have all my life
Yeah.
that I would never have stopped at, but just because I was sent there,
Mhm.
I walked into places that looked from the outside like some sort of rundown joint,
Yeah.
and when you open the doors, it's this massive like dance floor with like a stage and people dancing, and I'm like, where did all these people come from? Because from the outside, it's like a warehouse district, and then you
Yeah.
go inside and it's like a freaking a festival.
Hmm.
And I went into play. Let's put it this way: I saw um, famous bands of the underground circuit, like Black Flag and such,
Hmm.
that I would never have known because I simply don't run those circles.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, so when you step outside yourself, whether one thing or the other, it gives you different vantage points. And I couldn't believe how different Miami, little sections of Miami was,
Hmm.
that I would not participate necessarily.
Well, I'm probably going to talk myself into something right here, um, but I got to say it anyway. Linda has never seen Crater Lake. We live about 90 miles away from Crater Lake. Linda's never seen it. She's never been there. We've lived here for almost 12 years. So I've got to take her up to Crater Lake. And what has kind of lit a fire under me to want to do it this year is I ran across an article, and this is one of those go see something you wouldn't normally see, go do something you wouldn't normally do kind of a things. I've been to Crater Lake before, but it's been years. I mean, I think the last time I went, I was like 10 or 11 years old, if that old. There is a thing up there they called the old man of the lake. And this is a weird little aside, but it's one of those things. This is one of my incentives to make me want to go because I want to go see if I can spot the old man of the lake. The old man of the lake is a 30-foot long or 30-foot tall tree stump. They think it's a hemlock, but they're not quite sure. It's a 30-foot long tree that has been floating around in this lake vertically. It's not laying on its side, it's vertical since at least 1896. That's the
That's
first
crazy.
written record of the old man of the lake. And even then, they called it the old man of the lake.
And it's parallel or
Yeah, it's
vertical?
standing straight up and down. And the reason it's standing straight up and down instead of laying on its side is because it came down the hill and during a landslide, um, that they think this is how it happened. It came down the hill in a landslide, and it broke, as part of this landslide, because hemlock trees grow really super tall, and the root ball is still attached to it.
Right.
So what you have
Frozen.
is so what you have is the 30-foot long piece, and there's the root ball at the end. Well, over the years, the water has eroded the soil and the rocks and everything away. The bottom part is heavier than the top part. It's waterlogged, and the top part, there's about 5 foot sticking up out of the water. That's buoyant enough to let it float. But that's heavy enough. The root ball is heavy enough to keep it upright.
Wow.
Scientists they've of course grabbed onto it and taken pieces off of it to study it. That's how they know it's a hemlock. But they still don't know how capillary action hasn't caused the water to soak up to the top and the whole thing just sink. They don't know how it's staying afloat,
Is it
but it is.
alive?
Oh no, it's a dead tree,
Okay.
but it just floats around and it travels all over the place. They put a monitor on it and tracked it back in like 1970. When did he do this? 1971, 72, something like that. Um, 71, 72, something like that. And the thing, it travels all over the place. It just floats and goes. Well, I want to go see if I can see that.
Take some video or
Yep.
picture.
Ding dong, sure. They said preliminary carbon dating of the samples that they took. They suggested that the tree itself is about 450 years old.
Wow.
So, you know, what the heck? During a period of observation in 1938, the old man traveled around the lake 62 miles. They tracked it.
Damn. That's pretty cool, dude. Kind of like that.
Now, here is one thing. And now you can, this has encouraged a bunch of Native American superstitions. All right. In 1988, they were doing some submarine explorations of the lake. So the scientists decided to tie the old man off of the eastern side of Wizard Island so it wouldn't become a navigational hazard. They tied it, lashed it to the island, and all of a sudden the weather turned stormy. They It actually started snowing in August. When it started snowing, they said, "Oh, screw this." And one of the scientists went out, snuck out, and he untied the old man. 2 days later, the weather cleared up and everything was great. And that started encouraging and sparking up more and more superstitions about the old man of the lake. But they said when it started snowing in August, they knew something was wrong. Now, it's pretty high up in elevation, about 7,000 feet. But snow in August, I've seen snow in every month of the year except August.
Interesting. I like it. I think it's a nice legend.
Mhm.
Um,
So
hell,
I
I
want to
like.
go see if I can see it. Probably not. I mean, we're talking about a huge lake with a 5 foot stump sticking out of the water. I probably won't. But I mean, that doesn't mean that I won't look. What the heck?
One time we went to Cape Canaveral to see one of the shuttle launches,
Mm-hmm.
and there was a dude. There was a whole row of people down the side of the highway looking towards the um obviously safe distance, like, but
Mm-hmm.
it was like they were tailgating, let's say.
Mm-hmm.
So people were there enjoying, and then we got news that no, because due to this and we're like, oh, and then little by little, but you can see the disappointment. I was like, Dad, isn't it gonna is it gonna launch? Isn't it gonna launch? He says, no, son, let's go. But he was okay with it. Everybody was like upset. My dad was like, okay, let's go.
Yeah.
Like
Next.
it, it is what it is.
Yeah. Did you ever get to go see a launch?
No.
No. Wow, man. It's funny you mentioned those launches when we got to start thinking about landing the plane. When we were stationed in Savannah, Georgia, I worked in a cabinet shop out in Garden City, just outside of Savannah. And one of the guys that worked there, crotchety old grizzled old man, you know, Al, he was a hoot. He was a heck of a guy. He was a little old man, bent over, all hunched over, stronger than a damn ox, but he drove a Firebird Trans Am. And it's like, okay, you're not a little old man, come on.
That's crazy.
He swore up and down that every time there was a launch, it would make it rain in Savannah. And I'm like, Al, what about all the times it rains without a launch? He says, I guarantee it. If they launch, it's going to rain later that day. Al, it rains every afternoon here anyway. No, no, no. This is different, man. It It's just one of those things. He was convinced that those launches caused it to rain, even though you could set your watch by a thunderstorm at 4 in the afternoon during the summer there.
And did it though? The one time you tried testing it, or there was none?
Well, it rained, but it also rained for 30 days before that every afternoon, and 30 days after that every afternoon.
So he's
It's
always
like
going to be right.
it was going to be rain. Yeah. It's kind of like saying, everybody who drinks a glass of water dies. Well, eventually, yes. You know.
Yeah, yeah. You're not going to get that. You're not going to get that one wrong, no matter
Mhm.
what. Yeah,
Yeah.
it's funny how that works.
Yeah.
Backward engineering.
Well, no, the damn rockets are causing it. Ow! It rained for 10 days before the rocket launched. Well, no, this is different. How's it different? It's water falling from the sky. It's different. All right, if you say so, Al.
Well, I guess we can land it on that one. Are there any final thoughts before we land the plane?
Um, any final thoughts? Yeah, don't fry bacon when you're naked.
Yeah, that sounds good.
Words to live by. I mean, it's
And
it's kind of a way of life.
if you're naked, be careful of the doors and things you shut.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, just don't
Be,
fry bacon. Just you can put it in the
be mi-
microwave. You're good, but don't throw it in the skillet. I'm telling you.
be mindful, and also be mindful of the doors and cabinets you shut, especially the lower
Mm-hmm.
cabinets, just in
That's right.
case. Just one final thing. I took my dog out for, and I will again this evening if he's up for it, because
Uh-huh.
it depends on him. But I took him for a walk, and at some point, it has been raining here.
Mm-hmm.
And at some point, he wanted to go further and further, so I let him go wherever he wants to go, so that within reason, so that we can enjoy it. But at one point, we got to the shopping mall. That's how far we went. So he's gotten better since his last thing, or at least in a general sense. He's
Mm-hmm.
gone in the right direction. Um, but he's old, and but he wanted more and more. So and he had power, and we kept
Mm-hmm.
going, and then we got to the shopping mall, and then he wanted to go to the grassy knoll where there's a light pole, because he wanted to sniff over there. And he's tugging at me. It's okay, fine. It's off the path, but fine. So we crossed the freaking parking. He gets to the grass and he heads towards the thing. And when he stuffs his nose in the grass, he goes, "Roar!" And I looked at him, and I looked at there's an outlet right there. He must have, with his paw, had grounded himself, and then
Zapped himself.
yeah,
Ouch.
yeah. And no, and so I said, you see what happens? Come with me. Come on, let's go. You see what happens? And he was like freaked out. He was like, what the hell just happened, dude?
Yeah.
So he paid more mind to my instructions after that.
He don't want to go back there no more.
Yeah. In any event, we'll go ahead and land this puppy. I want to thank everybody for coming out and hanging with us. We go live every Tuesday at 9:30 Eastern, 6:30 Pacific Coast time here on the Trampled Underfoot podcast show on YouTube. We have a site over at Facebook with the same name, Trampled Underfoot podcast at Facebook, as well as a site.com, trampledunderfootpodcast.com. And finally, we're also sponsored by.
Well, I thought you were going to say something about going over there and checking past episodes, which you can do. TrampledUnderfootPodcast.com. We are sponsored by Harneal Media, your web solution. Look, folks, even if you're just toying with the idea of a website, or maybe you want to develop some merch and sell t-shirt designs, you got ideas for merch, you want to do baseball caps, coffee mugs, things of that nature, Steve is your man. He can hook you up with a print-on-demand service and integrate it into your website, into your web store. So they handle all of the inventory, they handle all the shipping, they collect all the taxes. You just sit back and watch the orders come in. He's incredibly priced. How he does it, I don't know. The man is everywhere, and he gives you performance. He doesn't give you excuses. Do yourself a favor. Head over to harneilmedia.com. Now, there's a link in the description of everything you'll find on this YouTube channel, and it's that way for a reason. Head over to harneilmedia.com. It's HARNEAL media.com, sponsor of trampledunderfootpodcast.com.
All right. Well, I hope you guys enjoyed it. We had a good time. We talked a little bit of this and that, and nothing. Do the things that you enjoy the rest of the week. Be safe doing it. Don't forget to buy some liquid chicken, and we'll catch you here next week, same time, and we're out of here. Peace.
Do what you feel. Keep both feet on the wheel. You don't have to go home, but you can't stay here.